Hi, everybody. We are back for our next play of the day. Today, we're going to be looking at the last play in our realism unit, Arthur Miller's The Crucible. Now, I've pretty much been telling these stories just straightforward and saying, here's the story, and then my students get a packet with a lot of notes and history and whatever in it. But this play is so intrinsically tied to what was happening in the country at the time that we do really need to discuss what was going on. And that was McCarthyism, which was started by Representative Joseph McCarthy in the House of Representatives. This was the height of the Red Scare and the Cold War, and everyone was terrified that America was going to just be taken over by communists. And McCarthy was among the most terrified. So he said, you know what the problem is and why there's such an outbreak of communism? It's Hollywood. So he said all the directors and writers and stars, they were making movies that were communist propaganda. And that's how they were getting Americans to become communist. So he started the House Un-American Activities Committee, where he literally was calling in all of these people from Hollywood and questioning them and saying, are you a communist? And it was horrible because you can't police thought and you can't put thought on trial because it would pretty much go like this. In comes some director and he's like, are you a communist, sir? And they're like, no. He goes, that sounds like something a communist would say. So what are you going to do with that? You're going to say, well, it's what I say too, but I'm not one of those. No, you can't prove that you're not something, especially when it's you're not thinking it. And one of the people at the center of this debacle, or that was really being threatened by it, was Arthur Miller, the playwright of The Crucible. And he was like, as an artist, as a human being, I want to write something about this, but I can't. Because if I write something against McCarthyism, they're going to assume I'm doing it because I'm a communist and I'll go to prison. So he starts looking back in time and he's like, when's another time in American history that something like this has happened? And he thought about 1692, 1693 in Salem, Massachusetts. And that's when they had the Salem witch trials. All these people are involved. It's a very big play. Just, get comfortable. We're going for a ride on this one. So, in Salem, Massachusetts, they were Puritans. And Puritans were so strict in how they lived as Christians that no one was allowed to make a mistake. No one was allowed to atone for their sins. They were just horrible people if they made a mistake. But what we're going to see is a lot of mistakes are actually being made in that town. So there's a lot of stories, right, that are set in Puritan times. The Scarlet Letter by Hawthorne, where a woman's husband disappears and she assumes he's dead after a while. And so she has a relationship with this other man only for her husband to come back. And they're like, well, that's it. Your husband was alive. You're an adulteress. So now she has to wear this big red A on her chest for adulteress everywhere she goes because she would never be forgiven. There's this sermon called Sinners in the Hands of an Angry God that if you read that, it's an actual Puritan sermon. They were controlling their people through terror. And that's very similar to what's happening during the Red Scare. We are going to control people through terror to not become communists, just like we are going to control people through terror to be the best Puritan they can be. So Arthur Miller wrote The Crucible. The Crucible starts, and we see Reverend Paris. He is the father of Betty Paris, and he's in her room, and she is in her bed, out cold, unresponsive, maybe a little whimper here and there. And Reverend Paris is very upset because he's only been the Reverend for 2 years, and the people of Salem don't respect him. he keeps wanting these golden candlesticks for the altar. And they're like, but we have the pewter ones that we got when we built the church. They were made by one of the members of our town. They're perfectly fine. He's like, no, God deserves gold. And they think he's greedy. They think he's shifty, and they don't trust him. So he's like, if my daughter is suddenly now like under a curse, no one's going to trust me. Thing is, she not under a curse. The night before this play starts, 5 girls from town, Betty Paris, Mercy Lewis, Susanna Walcott, Mary Warren, Betty Putnam, or pardon me, Ruth Putnam, so I guess there were 6 girls, and Abigail Williams. Abigail Williams is their leader, and ooh, she's a good character. So, these 6 girls liked some boys in town, and they went to Reverend Paris's slave, Tituba, and said, Tituba, you're a slave. You're here from the Caribbean. You practice voodoo. So give us some spells that we can cast on these boys so they'll like us. And Tituba is like, oh, that doesn't seem like a good idea. And they're like, Tituba, give us the stuff. And she's like, here's some spells. And so they go out into the woods one night and they're naked and they're dancing around this fire and they're saying these spells. And they get caught in Puritan times. And they know they are going to get like lashes. Except sweet little Abigail Williams says to her friends, well, we're in trouble unless we didn't do it. And they're like, what do you mean we didn't do it? She's like, I don't know what any of you were doing out there, but I had a spell put on me by a witch. And they're like, oh. She's like, there's lots of witches in this town. They're casting spells all the time. I think we were obviously under a spell. So now these girls have all gone home and they're like in their beds and they're like sickly and they're unresponsive or they're just making little sounds, but they slowly are getting out of bed and they're slowly starting to come to and they're like, oh, what happened? I don't remember anything. The devil came to me and said to do this. He was sent by a witch in town. I couldn't help it. And everybody's getting up except Betty Paris, daughter of the Reverend. No, she's going full on Tony-worthy performance with this. She's just staying in that bed. So people from the town all start coming in to see her because she and Ruth Putnam have still remained in bed. So some people that come are the Putnams, right down there in the bottom corner. They have one daughter named Ruth and a whole bunch of dead babies because Miss Putnam has had like 7, 8 kids and only one of them has lived. So Miss Putnam is going full on witch here. She's like, there are witches and they are trying to bring down my one baby that lived. And you meet other people from the town. You meet Giles Corey, who is this very nice old man who's like, I've lived here my whole life. I've never met a witch. And they're like, Giles, you're too old to know what you're talking about. There's witches. In fact, Reverend Paris, we find out, has sent for Reverend Hale. He's right down there. Boom. And Reverend Hale is from another town called Beverly, but he is an expert in the supernatural. So they've sent for him to help with this investigation. And Rebecca Nurse, this sweet old lady who's been in town forever, she's raised 12 kids. She helps everybody out. She's everybody's favorite. Everybody's like, oh, Rebecca Nurse, she's like a town treasure. And she comes in and she's like, I think we're all overreacting a bit because, you see, I've raised 12 children, and sometimes teenagers do bad things and then lie about it. And Miss Putnam is like, my daughter Ruth would never lie to me. She is a good Christian girl. And Rebecca says, I'm not questioning if she's a good Christian girl. I'm just saying sometimes the best way to make something go away with children is ignore it. And Miss Putnam is like, You're telling me my one living daughter is at home in bed and I should just ignore it? You know what I've been through, Rebecca. I have a bunch of dead babies. And now that I think about it, you were the midwife for like 5 of those births, and they all died. Rebecca, are you a witch? And Rebecca's like, I think I'll be heading home now. Thank you for your hospitality. And the older people, a lot of the people are like, this is crazy. The people who are buying in are the people with power. Reverend Paris really wants witches so that he can get rid of them and save the town and become the town hero. So these people with power are buying into this narrative. Finally, in comes John Proctor. John Proctor is a farmer. He lives outside of town. He also is on a character tree with 2 arches with hearts. So we know this is not going to go well. John Proctor is married to Elizabeth Proctor. They've been together forever. They have 2 sons. But John Proctor's wife, Elizabeth, got very, very ill. She was in bed for like 6 months. And she couldn't get out of bed, and he couldn't do the cooking and the cleaning while he was running the farm. So they hire a 17-year-old girl to be their help. That 17-year-old girl is Abigail Williams. Abigail Williams is not a good girl. She's not. And eventually, while Elizabeth Proctor is, stuck in bed, John Proctor and Abigail Williams are getting it on behind the barn. And eventually Elizabeth finds out about this, and John feels horrible about it, and he fires Abigail, and they hire Mary Warren, who is another young girl who was also dancing, but she seems to be less of a problem than Abigail. He comes in, he's looking, he's like, it seems to me that these teenagers are just trying to get people in trouble when they were doing something wrong. And they're like, no, John, you've always been respected in this town, but no, we're calling Reverend Hale of Beverly. And he's like, just seems like an overreaction. And everybody's like, well, we're going to go downstairs real quick because we need to have a prayer meeting about this. And they conveniently all leave. And John is in the room, and Abigail is in the room. And she's like, John, I miss you. And he's like, oh. And she's like, I go to my window every night and I watch for you and hope that you'll come for me. And he's like, well, I'm not going to do that. So you might want to quit wasting your time. She's like, you know you want me, just like you wanted me when you were sweating like a stallion behind the barn. Because Abigail Williams, she problem. And he's like, Abigail, I shan't be coming for you again. And she's like, John, just give me a look, a good look. And he's like, I must go back to Elizabeth. And he leaves. And everyone else comes back in because Betty jumps out of bed and runs toward the window saying, I'm going to fly, I can fly. And everyone's like, what's going on? And she's like, let me fly away. And they're like, this is horrible. And they're like, clearly the devil is coming to her. And all of a sudden, Abigail Williams is like, I saw the devil came to me. I saw Goody Proctor, meaning good wife Proctor, meaning Elizabeth Proctor, with the devil. And then the other girls start saying, I saw Goody Good with the devil. There's this woman named Sarah Good. She never appears. She's like this homeless woman in town. I saw Goody Osborne with the devil. And they're just shouting out the names of all these women. And they're like, well, there's your witches. Act 2, it's 4 acts, but I'll get through it pretty quick. It's quite a ride, the Crucible. So Act 2 takes place back at the Proctor's house. And we have this whole big scene where John and Elizabeth Proctor are at home alone. And it starts out really tense. He had an affair. She has allowed him to stay and not told anyone about it, but clearly she doesn't trust him. And he comes in, he's got some dead rabbits. And she's like, I'll make them for dinner. Thank you. And he's like, no need to thank me. I am doing my job. Yeah, so it's a really, lusty scene. But eventually she's like, I noticed that you left today. Where did you go? And he's like, I went into town. These girls are crying witchcraft. And he's like, but it's not true. They didn't actually like get hit by witches. They were trying to put spells on people so guys would like them. And she's like, and how do you know that? And he's like, Abigail told me. And she's like, you were alone with Abigail? And he's like, ah, Elizabeth, I can't do anything other than apologize to you. And she's like, well, I sympathize. And he's like, oh, your sympathy could freeze beer. All of a sudden, knock at the door. They go, and first person to come in, Mary Warren, their servant. She's right down here. Mary Warren has been away all day, and they're like, Mary, where have you been? And she's like, well, they've started having trials for the witches in town, and as I'm one of the victims of the witches, I have to be at the courthouse every day. And they're like, you don't need to go to that courthouse. This is a sham. And she's like, no, I promise you, today they found out that Goody Good and Goody Osborne are witches, and they're in prison. They're set to be hanged. And they're like, what? It's like, and it's a good thing too, because, in the middle of the trial, one of the girls started speaking in tongues because someone was sending their spirit out to her. So it's a good thing that we're doing this work. I won't be here tomorrow. They're like, this is crazy. And then she's like, oh, Goody Proctor, I was just sitting in the courthouse today and I made you this poppet, which is like this tiny little doll. She's like, I was just sewing. I made you a poppet. And Elizabeth takes it. She's like, it's a fine poppet. Thank you. And she leaves the poppet there. And then, she goes to her room and there's another knock on the door. They go. It is Reverend Hale of Beverly coming to talk to them. He's like, I'm just visiting all the houses in town. We noticed on the church docket that you've not been in attendance for months. And they're like, yes, well, Elizabeth has been very sick. Yes, I heard. I am sorry for your ill health. How about you, Mr. Proctor? Have you yourself been ill? He's like, no, I was looking after my wife. And he's like, that is a good thing to do, but you're ignoring God. He's like, I'm not ignoring God. We do pray before every meal. And he's like, good, being such a good, upstanding Christian, why don't you recite your commandments for me? And then John's like, now? He's like, yes, now. Recite them. He's like, thou shalt not steal. Thou shalt have no other gods before me. Thou shalt honor thy mother and father. He goes through this whole list and he's like, and thou shalt have no other gods before me. And Hale is like, you've said that one already. And he's like, and he's trying to remember the last one. And Elizabeth is just like, adultery, John. John looks at her and he's like, there, Reverend Hale, you see, between the two of us, we do know them all. He's like, we've been talking to people in town, and there have been reports about your wife, Elizabeth. Elizabeth, I ask you, do you have any poppets around? And she's like, I haven't had poppets since I was a girl. And he's like, I do spy one on your table now, because these poppets are like voodoo dolls. And she's like, Mary Warren just made that. And they bring Mary Warren into the room and she's like, yes, I made it. I gave it to her. And they're like, because we have a very disturbing report. May we see this poppet? And they look, and from the poppet, they pull out a needle in its stomach. And they're like, it's a needle. It's a needle. And apparently in town, Abigail Williams had stabbed herself with a needle and then said, someone is stabbing me with a voodoo doll, and pulled the needle out. And now they think that Elizabeth Proctor is stabbing this doll to hurt Abigail Williams. So they arrest Elizabeth Proctor and they take her away. And John Proctor grabs Mary Warren by the arm and he's like, Mary Warren, you know as well as I that this is a lie. Why are you lying? Why are you setting people up? She's like, because Abigail Williams is terrifying and I can't go against her or she will just say I'm a witch too. And he's like, tomorrow you shall go with me to that court and you shall admit this is a lie. And she's like, I can't. Third act, you're in court. Now they brought in Judge Hawthorne and the deputy governor, Danforth. Danforth is terrifying. Danforth is like, were you seen with the devil? Goody good? No. That's what I expected a witch would say. Take her away. He's a bad guy. And they are talking actually at the moment that it starts to Rebecca Nurse, who everybody loves, who's the sweet old lady. And they're like, did you handle those dead children? And she's like, I did everything I could to save them. And they're like, oh, witch. And she's thrown into prison. But then in comes John Proctor, and he's like dragging Mary Warren along with him. And he's got like good old Giles Corey. And they come in and they're like, we do stop this court. And they're like, who is this? And it's like, John Proctor, sir, I am here to stop this court because it is a sham. These girls are lying. And it's like, prove it. And he's like, Mary, tell them what you know. And Mary comes up and she's like, it's false. We didn't do anything. They didn't do anything. We were just in the woods. And suddenly Abigail stands up and says, Mary, who's talking through you? Whose spell are you under? And she's like, no, Abigail, let's just tell them the truth and take our lashings. And she's like, Abigail, let's tell him the truth and all the girls start repeating what she's saying. And then Abigail looks up to the corner and she's like, oh, go away, little bird. Go away, little bird. And they all look up and the adults are like, what? What's going on? And all the girls start playing along and there's this bird and it's there to it's a demon bird and it's in the room and they're like, this is crazy. And finally, Abigail's like, oh, it flew away. And all the other girls are like, oh. And then all of a sudden, John Proctor goes to Abigail, grabs her, throws her on the ground, and says, stop this, you lying whore. Puritanical times. So they're like, why do you say this about this young girl? She's like, she is no young girl. She knows what she's doing. And Danforth is like, why would you say this? What evidence do you have that this is a lie? And he's like, I have lain with Abigail Williams. And everybody's like, oh. He's like, it's when she was working for me. It's when my wife was sick. I told my wife we kicked her out of the house. But it happened. And she wants my wife dead. And that is why all of this is happening. And he's like, and Danforth's like, what say you, Abigail? And she's like, I can't believe that someone would say something like that about me. He's clearly also a witch. And they're like, are you a witch? And he's like, no, you people aren't listening. And they say, fine. We're going to ask your wife. Bailiff, go get Elizabeth Proctor. So they go to get Elizabeth Proctor. And he says, Danforth is like, when she walks in this room, you may not look at her. You may not speak to her. She will only look at me, any sounds, and you will be in contempt of court. And they bring in Elizabeth, and she's like, John. And he's like, nope, you look at me. Eyes on me. Don't look at anyone else. I have one question for you. And Elizabeth's like, okay. It's like, did your husband lay with Abigail Williams? Now, poor Elizabeth. She's in puritanical times. If she admits that he had an affair, then she might get out, but he might go to prison. She knows nothing that has happened in this courtroom yet. She's asked one question, which is your husband a sinner in a religious-based society? And she's like, and he's like, nope, look at me. And she says, well, no. And they grab her and they start dragging her out of the courtroom. And Proctor goes, Elizabeth, they know. And she's like, oh God. And they drag her away. And it's like, even though she did that, Danforth is so strict and so desperately needs for there to be witches and for this not to be all a trick by teenage girls that he has fallen for, that he's like, nope, on the record, she said, no, you are clearly also a witch, sir. You will go to prison. Act 4. We are in the prison. Problem is, somewhere after Act 3 and those accusations, Abigail Williams has taken it upon herself to run away. So you can see right there, she has left the whiteboard. That's pretty suspicious. So they've realized they may have made a mistake, but they also can't admit they made a mistake because then they're actually murderers who killed innocent people. They had talked to Giles Corey to get information from him. Giles Corey, they finally interrogated him by putting him under this board, and the board, they would put boulders on it, and they kept saying, admit you're a witch, admit you're a witch, and he just kept saying more weight until finally it crushed him and he died. So we enter into this final scene, and first we see Tituba, the slave, and she is like talking to the devil. She sees the devil coming for her, and she's like, no, devil, no. And she's gone insane in this prison. But then we see John Proctor, and he has a visitor. That is Reverend Hale. Reverend Hale realized early on, wait, this doesn't feel right. And so he's made a deal with Danforth that they can save everybody. No one else is going to die. But all the person has to do is sign their name to a document saying they were a witch and now they won't be a witch anymore. And John Proctor's like, I'm not doing that. And they're like, maybe his wife can convince him. So they go get Elizabeth. And everybody leaves the room and it's just him and Elizabeth. And they're like, Elizabeth is like, what are you going to do, John? And he's like, I can't give them the power of thinking they won. This is one of the most evil things to ever happen in our country. We're just going to ignore the fact that we're in this room with a slave and pretend like that's not also as evil. This is the worst. And so he's like, I don't know what to do. What do you want me to do? And she's like, John, you are a good man. You will make the right choice. But I will tell you, I'm going to sign the paper. I am going to live. Our sons need someone. And my life would be much easier if you were there to help me. And he's like, fine, Elizabeth, I love you. I'll do this for you. And so they bring everyone back in and they bring in the document and they're like, sign it. And Elizabeth signs it. And then in comes Rebecca Nurse, who everybody loves, who's a good lady. And she sees John Proctor pick up the pen and she's like, John, what are you doing? You've given them everything. Don't give them this too. And he takes the pen and he sets it down. And they're like, what are you doing, Mr. Proctor? And he's like, I won't give you this. And they're like, why not? And he says, because it is my name. Because I have given you everything. All I have left is my name. And when I put that on that paper, I may live, but you have that too. On a lie that goes against God, that goes against Christianity. And I refuse to give you that. If not signing that paper means you will kill me, then kill me. But you may not have my name. And they did. They killed John Proctor. They kill Rebecca Nurse. Yeah, it was a bloodbath in Salem in 1692. But it's such a cool play because you see how it ties right into McCarthyism of like, but you are a communist. based on just what other people would say. You couldn't prove yourself innocent, just like here. So it's a fantastic play. Thank you for sticking with me on this ride. I hope you enjoyed it as much as I did. Goodbye.